And so, it continues. Hello there, welcome back to the Writing Advice Q&A! I'm your host, Amy Karen. As you know, I like to reply to all the questions I get in the comments. I take a minute every day to give everyone a quick reply to their questions, and I like to feature questions that jump at me or I can relate to at this moment with my own writing and editing, and I put them in the forefront. And today we're going to be talking about the concept of how to not write yourself into a corner. This question was sent by a lovely viewer just like you, so if you have a question, do not hesitate to leave it in the comments down below. Now, one more disclaimer, just one more little thing. I want to let you know that the following you're about to hear is my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Don't take it as gospel, take it instead as the ramblings of a silly person who looks a little bit, or rather precisely like this. So, the question that I got from a dear viewer was focused primarily on complex magic systems. Applied to situations in which not having planned your magic system all the way created situations in which you don't know where to go or you're stuck in one particular place because of the things you said before. Now, I chose this question because I am super relating to that right now, because I am finishing a book right now. I'm writing and I'm almost done with it, and this story that I'm currently writing has indeed a weird magic system. I wouldn't say complex, because I don't particularly feel it's that complex, but it is definitely weird. And allow me to propose you a situation, okay? Imagine me. I am writing at my desk, and in the process of writing a fight scene between one of our long-term antagonists and one of our side characters, the antagonistic character unleashes forth an ability that basically, for all intents and purposes, makes them impervious to all forms of physical damage, just to make things simple. Let's think of it as a force field around them. Imagine me now. I'm writing, and I'm doing what I'm doing when I'm writing. I am, you could say, channeling the story. I am just letting the words flow through my fingers, and I'm not questioning them. I write without hesitation and without doubt, just getting the words on the page. And as I am describing what this looks like, and it's coming to me and I'm just getting it out there. I'm describing what this ability looks like and how our character's reacting to it and what's going on. And halfway through writing this, I feel a little annoying thought in the back of my mind. A little fly, like a gnat, just like flying around me, just zzz, and then just landing next to my ear and going, hey Max, if this antagonist could do this, you know, this thing where they project this force field and nothing can touch them, why didn't they do it earlier in the book, Max? And then I'm not writing. I've stopped writing. The pen is no longer touching the paper. And if you wanna just draw me for dramatic effect, just sweat just sliding down my face. If this antagonist had the ability to project this as per the rules of the magic system, why didn't they do it before? Were there situations in which it would have worked? Were there problems that would have been solved had they just done that from the start? That is terrifying. It's almost as though I felt cornered. At this point, if you like your really good video game analogy, the choice is propped on this screen for me. I felt that I could either stop right the heck now, stop now, and recheck the entire story to make sure that I never made that mistake. Reread the whole thing. Do it now. Or another choice, ignore it. Super ignore it. Hopefully you'll never come around and we just don't think about it. And I felt those were my choices. Of course, that's not entirely true. I'm being facetious. Because my main subject today is what I believe to be the third option and what has worked for me the most when writing and when editing. The middlemost choice. make a note of what you're worried about on the margins of the page or on freaking sticky notes. Put it on that page and keep on writing. Repeat. Make a note of what you think may be a problem with your story, your storyline, the character motivation, the description of this particular place, the thing your character said in that particular bit of dialogue that you think you may have contradicted yourself with at the beginning of the book. Write it down. Write it down. Put it somewhere you know you're gonna see it when you're revising the book, and keep on writing. Why keep on writing? Why even take a note? Why not just ignore it? Because I think that, at least for me, and how I deal with my particular, I guess, writing and my anxiety, if I don't write that, I'm afraid that I will forget. And in turn, I'll just keep it in the back of my mind at all times. So writing it exercises that particular demon and lets me not worry about it for a little while. Why keep on writing? Why not just go back and fix it right now? Well, because for as interesting, as shiny as the allure of revising right now may seem, I particularly feel that you're ultimately wasting your time. The sooner you get that book done, the sooner you know what you have to work with, and the sooner you will know what are the actual problems in your story. To go back to my particular story, this particular book that I've been writing about, I think I've posted about this on Twitter, and I've talked about it in other videos. There have been many times throughout the act of writing this particular book where that little nagging, bugging feeling shows up, and I'm like, oh god, let me just write this note, double check that very first line of dialogue in the book, because I'm pretty sure I was trying to establish something that is no longer gonna happen. Just write it down, stick that sticky note at the beginning of the book, and just get back to work. More often than not, being completely real with you and honest with you, I would say, if I had to give a percentage, about 40% of the time, 35% of the time, the notes that I make are not as important as I thought they would be in the heat of things. As I'm writing them, in retrospect, a bunch of those notes are not as important, and they are usually easy fixes. Rephrase what the character says at the beginning. Revise that description. Make sure to actually describe what the place looks like before the final fight happens. Stuff like that. They may seem big and enormous problems that you have to fix right now, but usually they're not. Usually, you end up realizing, oh, actually this antagonist hasn't actually had a real fight this entire book. This is the first time where they actually feel threatened, so it would make sense that they wouldn't actually draw this ability out. Done and done. As a little bit of a side note, for anyone out there who may find themselves at the precipice of why hasn't this character used this ability the entire book, I would like to give you a reminder of the classic J.R.R. token paradigm. Magic with consequences. If Frodo can become invisible whenever he wears the ring, why doesn't he just wear the ring the whole time? There's a reason for that. Consequences. The freaking Eye of Sauron can see him wherever he is, and that in turn brings consequences to him and his friends. Magic with consequences. If you ever find yourself at a point in a story with magic system, and you think to yourselves, wow, this character's overpowered, consider reviewing the consequences of this ability. Now, this has been a really nice and cute setup, but I haven't actually talked about how not to write yourself into a corner, so let's apply the things that I've been saying this whole time. First off, whether it is a complex magic system, a complex story structure, or just making sure that the plot twist makes sense and it hits the reader hard where it ought to, I would like to give you the following advice. First and foremost, if you are currently writing this story, either A, have yourself an outline that can guide you, not tell you what has to happen, but can guide you to where the story has to go, and so you have a direction, use it. If outlines don't work for you, like with me, I would recommend, and I know it's gonna sound a little silly, have faith in your story and follow it to the ends of the earth. Okay? I know this particular thing is the most scary one, because the big fear of writing yourself into a corner is feeling as though you end up in a situation in which you can't get out of. And as a little bit of inspiration on the side, your characters can get out of things. You see, characters are kind of like ferrets. You can lock them in wherever you want, but eventually they'll find a way out. Trust in your characters. As I've said for a really long time, if you are unsure as to where the story is going to go, follow your characters. They are at the center of the story, and it is ultimately their story. They know where it's going, so follow them. What matters the most when you're writing the story is to write the story, to get it done and to get it out on the paper. If you never finish the story, it doesn't matter whether the plot twist doesn't make sense or the magic system has flaws here and there. None of that's gonna matter if you don't finish the book. I know it may seem scary and daunting, but there is nothing you cannot revise into greatness. Put it on the page. The whole principle behind taking notes and keeping on and continuing on writing is that you do not stop. The worst thing I believe you can do when you are writing is to stop writing to do something else. If you sit down, if you make the time to write, just do it. If that little bugging feeling shows up when you're writing, make a note of whatever you think the problem may be. Sometimes it's not actually even a problem, and keep on writing. I can assure you, more often than not, it's actually not even a problem. During this book, I've had issues with characters' names, characters' pronouns, characters' descriptions, where I thought I would have to fix them during the story. And as the story developed, these things that I thought were mistakes on my part ended up being correct, ended up being part of those characters and their traits. So I just kept going. They ended up becoming things. Through the organic, natural act of storytelling, these things that I thought were wrong ended up being right, because they were a part of that world. And ultimately, the story knows more than I do, let's be entirely honest. As they say, I'm just the messenger. And the person in charge of making sure this story looks good. Which brings me over to the next point. If you're writing, keep on writing. Don't stop. Just don't stop. Get it written, and then revise it amazingly. Aside from the usual advice that I give people on this channel, let your story sit on the side for several weeks so you disconnect yourself from the story, so you can read it again as though it was written by someone else. That distance can allow you to make the harsh cuts that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do. Now, that's the easiest advice I can give you. Wait some time before you start revising. Read your story out loud. The easiest way, and as someone who doesn't speak English as their first language and has dyslexia, I can assure you, reading out loud helps a lot. It's like the easiest way to spot missing words and sentence structure that doesn't make sense and dialogue that feels stuffy. But all of that is secondary to this issue. How do you make sure that everything you wrote makes sense? From the magic system, to the setting, to the character motivations, whatever it is. How do you make sure that it makes sense? How do you make sure that the reader will understand it? How do you make sure that you're clear? I can assure you the first time you do this is going to be real hard. Because the first time you do anything is really hard, but I can assure you you'll get used to it. What I would recommend is this. As you revise the story, do it in passes. Look at your story and don't try to juggle 1,000 things at once. Read your story and fix misspellings. Read your story and fix structure. Read your story and fix character dialogue. Fix the things in one wave after another, so that when the time comes to ask the harshest question of all, you don't have to worry about those little things. And that is asking why. Why did this character do this? Why did this character say this at this particular point? Why did this character keep this secret for so long? Why did this character not use the shield ability when they could have used it all along? Why? you have to ask this question. And I know that it's awful to realize that you have so much work ahead of you, even after finishing the first draft of your story. But you will find, more often than not, that the answers are already in your story. And if they are already in your story, then you just have to make sure that it's clear at one point or another if you really have to disclose that information. Like, I joke about this all the time, but seriously, when you are revising your story, you're gonna spend most of your revision time revising the first third of your book, making sure that you establish things, that you introduce plot elements way ahead of when they show up, and laying down the foundations for your plot twists. All of those things, you go back to the first third of the book. That to me is the hardest part of the revision process, because more often than not, by the time that you are writing and revising the last part of your book, everything is in place. You are in tune with the book, you know what's happening, the plot twists are already flying left and right, and the reveals are coming as well, and you know what you gotta do. What you gotta do then, of course, is to go back to the beginning of your story and establish everything. I know it is very easy to feel during the act of writing as though every corner you take can lead to certain doom and destruction. And sometimes you may feel as though every time you do anything, you're writing yourself into a corner, but I can assure you, with the power of taking notes and the determination to revise your story amazingly, to dedicate yourself to revising your story into the best it can possibly be, I can assure you, you may feel that you are writing yourself into a corner, but I am certain there's a escape hatch underneath your feet, and a ladder, off to your side, and a rope you can climb up. But what you gotta do, as always, is to make sure to revise your story so that that escape hatch and that ladder and that rope are there from the beginning. Okay? Okay. And I hope that you enjoyed this particular answer, and thank you to the lovely viewer who sent this question. I hope I wasn't too rambly, and I hope that I made my point clear across. If I wasn't, please let me know in the comments down below, as well as sharing your particular points of view on this question. As always, remember that if you have a question you would like me to answer in a future video, please leave it in the comments down below. Now, we have some more interesting writing advice videos coming to you relatively soon, but for the time being, it's time for me to start signing off. If you enjoy my videos and would like to make sure that I can continue on making them for the foreseeable future, please consider checking out my Patreon. You can get cool perks like watching my videos early, having behind the scenes information on what I'm doing and what's up with my books and my stories and videos. But of course, if Patreon doesn't work for you, you can always treat me to a cup of coffee. Link in the description down below. One-time donation, I would really appreciate it. And of course, now that we are rolling into the formal end screen, up here there should be a big playlist with over 200 writing advice videos. That's a lot! Up here is my pixel face, you can click on to subscribe. Over here is a link to my Patreon, and over here is a link to my other channel with Kitty, where we are very, very, very silly people. Thank you for tagging along, thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I hope to see you on the next one.